Are the 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers good or bad for Najee Harris? That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, Najee Harris, he's setting Roy Halou records in week 3. He's seeing a market share we have rarely seen at the running back position. Christian McCaffrey's even a little jealous. But what are your thoughts on Najee Harris and the PPR and volume infused environment that still, frankly, does not look that great from the rushing perspective?
Get someone who looks at you the way that Ben Roethlisberger looks at Najee Harris on 4th and 10.
Which is you're alive and close to me.
Game on the line. And like, ooh, I want to throw it to you behind the line of scrimmage. Let's try this one out.
Break 7 tackles and win the game for us, Najee.
Right. In the no chance category. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's a really high floor situation. Like the situation might be overall crummy. You could say, hey, there's lots of problems with the offense, but what's not a problem is the fact that Najee Harris is leading the league in routes run, right? And it's just, you can aggregate a lot of value just by being present and being out there. But he's doing it by a pretty significant margin too. So it's not maybe the most pretty thing. It's not going to win any beauty contests, but it's pretty effective right now for fantasy. And I think he's trending up into actually a decent floor. And then maybe there's some ceiling. I don't know if it's this year in terms of like running back 1 type upside, but I think could actually be pretty valuable here for contending teams.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking back when we were kind of talking about this sort of ugly profile, if you will, which is like down and dirty. Like the next time he has a 100-yard rushing game, it might be a different year. like that's not really how many attempts will he have to have? How much positive game script, which the Steelers may not have. Like there's a lot of barriers for the rushing side. But we've said before, the rushing is pretty much we say that's almost an entrance into the amusement park of we want you to be in the game. And carries are a part of being in the game, but it's to get the touchdown opportunities when you get close, red zone, goal line. And then it's also while you're on the field. So let's hope you're running routes. Let's hope that leads to targets. Let's hope that leads to volume of targets and market share and all those things, because that's more efficient. It's touchdowns, it's passing game, and the rest is sort of white noise in the relative scheme of how good a running back production is. I thought about one name when I thought about this kind of ugly season, and it was 2019 Le'Veon Bell. Do you remember Le'Veon Bell on the Jets? This was ugly.
It was painful.
Now he was getting high volume as a runner. It was 3 yards per carry, a bag of dust. I mean, they were running quarterbacks out there that Jets fans probably couldn't name right now. In terms of, there was a 2 or 3 week segment where it's like, really, it's Le'Veon Bell and question mark for the whole team. Right. So no, he got like 250 carries that season. But what he did is he was out there and he had some of these games and some of these drives at the end of games. He'd get like 4 or 5 targets in a drive. And it reminded me exactly. Now, Harris is actually above that. Like I actually went back. Bell averaged 4.5 receptions per game, which is very good for the running back position. And I fleeced some stuff out. But if you're over 5, you're basically a lock to finish as a running back 1. If you're getting 5 receptions a game, and this is sort of your principle of DeAndre Swift, right? Like this is your DeAndre Swift could finish number 1 overall argument. And Harris is 6.7. He's ahead of Swift. He's ahead of everybody. Almost, there's not very many people ahead of 5. So he's at 8, and that's absolutely sustainable. If he stays over 5, he's a near lock for the top 12. Basically, status quo of where he is. And he still has not scored a rushing touchdown. Don't you think a guy of his size is going to fall in a few times this year? They're going to randomly end, a Chase Claypool DPI in the end zone. Something's going to occur. They're going to get down there a few times. And then they're probably going to give it to Harris 4 straight times. But he's going to score a few. This is not a Devin Singletary type situation where he might score in December. We don't know. So, but yeah, I think people overlook sheer volume of receptions, as you were saying.
Yeah, and like it's not. And I used to play this when I was a younger Dynasty player. It's funny you mentioned Halou, but that was when I first got into Dynasty. It was like sort of that when Halou had that. I think it was the year that happened, or maybe the year before that I was in. But I remember that pretty vividly. And I was much more into like, oh, I got to have like the really like I want that really high efficiency player, or like I want, like it's got to be like a perfect profile. All these things, like now, like just give me the Najee Harris production. Like, you know what I mean? We can worry about
the guy
how
that
cute
sees
it is.
95% of snaps.
Correct. Yeah. Like with, like it's when I think it was in the major league when the guys are in the outfield, they're like, oh, it's too high, like the arc's too high, and they were like, who cares, it's gone. It's like, it's that sort of thing with Dynasty. It's like, listen, the workload, and I don't really care how pretty it is, just give me all that workload. And he's like he's 30 more routes run in terms of the passing game. Like there's a lot than any other running back. And like, there's a lot of forgiveness that can go on in there with even low efficiency and all that stuff. Like that volume is huge. So I think he's really set up for a good situation. And, I think it's interesting. Like, can you pivot to him from other guys, especially if you're a contending player? If you're a contending team or contending GM, can you pivot to Harris? What's the plus from Barkley? What's the plus from some of these guys? Think hard about making that type of trade, but I'd be really interested in that because I don't think you're going to really see that much in terms of production right now because the floor is really high.
Yeah, and I think looking at those higher volume receiving guys, I mean, again, I was looking back last year. I think J.D. McKissic was the one that stood out of high receiving volume, but he was very much in that change of pace role. We always say the big back who can move and can catch, and there's relative oscillations to that. So moving, if you're 225, 230 pounds, Najee Harris isn't a 4.48 guy. Like there's a minimum. Le'Veon Bell, big back who can move and can catch. Now move was a guy that can be laterally dynamic and fluid and not necessarily, and Harris is the same way. He's not necessarily fast. He's not necessarily, what we saw from Antonio Gibson, breaking away for a 70+ yard touchdown. That's probably not in his future, but that's okay. So can they have that general formula? And for Harris, I mean, he seems just underrated in general because he's also a round one pedigree. So if you're already talking about a year one top 12 hit and a situation that we all pretty much can see. I mean, Steelers might be bottom 5 when I watch every play of every game, when that offense is painful. I mean, Harris is just like he's breaking tackles. He's doing all those things. You're going to get Chase Claypool. When's he going to actually haul some of these, quasi accurate passes down? And that's what's, and that's the only interesting parts of this offense. And I guess how many 3rd and 30s they have. That's also interesting. But again, Harris is getting it done, but it has to get better, right? Like we say that now they might drift into the darkness of not having a quarterback next year. And that you assume it's going to be better than Ben Roethlisberger, but careful. But offensive line, like it just feels like this is as bad as it's been for Pittsburgh in quite a long time. And Harris is going to be one that he's locked in for 4 years. Things will be better in a future season than what it is now. Yeah,
and you don't have to. Right, I think things will get better, but at the same time, like you have a lot of volume right now to make up for it not being great. So that would be the big thing there. And yeah, I mean, I think the writing's on the wall with Big Ben. It's interesting to me too. Coming into, I was following a lot of the Pittsburgh stuff coming into the season. And one of the curious things to me was they brought in Matt Canada as their offensive coordinator. And they were like, oh, he's going to, he's really going to change the system and everything. You know what Matt Canada's claim to fame is? He was the guy that was Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator the year Joe Burrow sucked at LSU. And then they fired him and they brought in, the next offensive coordinator who oversaw Joe Burrow's explosion. Surprised that hasn't worked out for Pittsburgh. That's just, that was always curious to me that, they're going to do a lot more different things. Like, I don't know, the prior on that wasn't particularly good. So I don't know. I'm not entirely shocked that this isn't a good offense. And I think Roethlisberger's probably been cooked for a couple of years now post injury, but I think Harris, we'll see. Like we've seen enough quarterback movement that I'm not totally worried about it for next year either.
Yeah. And Swift is running back 3. So he's right up there, and he's number 2 over 6 receptions per game, aka the fast track. And who would have thought Derrick Henry? He's getting enough work. I mean, he's at 4 receptions per game. So I guess that's sort of like the Nick Chubb effect, right? Like if Kareem Hunt goes out, how much, instead of 1 reception per game, does Chubb go to 4? and all of a sudden he is top 2 or 3. So
he's up 4 times his yards per route run over last year. It's a 4. Yeah. He's up 4 times what it was last year. Just incredible, and he's on a higher pace too. But just combine the two, it's more volume and a lot more efficiency. It's wild for Henry.
Yeah. So again, it's amazing some of these basic things. Well, it's very difficult to predict. If you get a couple cracks in a game, sometimes 0 inside the 3-yard line, 5-yard line for these optimal running back cracks. And sometimes you might even roll snake eyes. You know what I hate to see, Jordan? The last thing on this is that when you get your running back like down there at the goal line, you're like, all right, here we go. And then false start. That's the move. And then from the 6-yard line, they have a successful run down to the 3 and they don't see another sniff. And that's just it. It's amazing. A little flinch by the guard. And that's the difference of 6 points for your running back stat line for the week. And you know what? That might be the difference of good and bad. Ancillary point, is Ezekiel Elliott still the starting running back for the Cowboys?
100%.
Because that was in a threat this past week.
Oh, yeah, he's 100%.
Apparently.
And if you sort of look at the if you look at the workload, it's not even. I don't even.
It wasn't debatable before that, but people were seeing that he was getting carries. I mean, he was still getting more routes. Like that was not even. Things have to drastically change on all of that feeder data to actually consider Pollard the starter.
100%. 44 carries for Zeke so far, 199 yards. 27 carries for Pollard, 183 yards. And again, some of that stuff. So it's a bigger number in terms of yards per attempt for Pollard, but a lot of that it's not the same usage. It's not the same. They are not playing the same position. You're getting some of those jet sweeps, all that stuff out of Pollard. I think the big thing, the big indicator that this job is not going away from Zeke is the routes. Like you said, 92 routes run for Zeke, 28 for Pollard. This isn't even a close call in terms of it's still Zeke's job.
And it felt like that was a major talking point last week among 2 or 3 other players, but Zeke and that depth chart was a big one. And yet you kind of look at some of the other, and that's why you have to go again beyond the box score, because it only tells you a certain number of things. And you might see, they have pretty similar touches. And then you watch the game on Monday night and it's just not even a discussion point. Every red zone, that who's in? Zeke is in. You look at all the pivotal third downs. Who's in? Zeke is in. That tells you everything you need to know. Do you want to remind you about
Speaking of other things that were in that game, Dak in the end zone and not called a touchdown for some reason. It's just boggling.
Yeah, that was a tough one. And also, if you're a point per carry Miles Sanders starter, that one was not a great not a great game. He might be the best running back talent-wise that has the most screwball situation so far in his career. I would be surprised he gets to 26 years old and he ends up having a monster season and people are like, oh, I dropped him years ago. Like, I didn't even think he was a thing. No, it was an Eagles thing. Like, I am so confused at what they did on Monday night. You can be trailing, but to just, like, not even run the ball and not even attempt.
Yes.
Mind-blowing. And you know what? He's a good receiver, too. So, yeah, let's go get Kenny Gainwell. That matters. Let's make sure we get a pass-centric guy with one of our midday 3 picks. All right. Do want to remind you about the daily email update from Joe Bryant. You get a lot of great information. You don't want to be left out. And us on staff, we get it. We are on that giant, massive list because, again, if your league mates get it and you don't, that could be the edge that you don't have when first come, first serve waivers come about later on in the week. Something pops up and it's like, boom, let me get in there, as opposed to your competitors getting the news and getting the heads up on, maybe it's tea leaves about an injury. Gene Bramwell has you covered. All the early week stuff, links to articles, links to rankings for the week. And you can find all of that in the free email update there on the right corner top of the homepage at footballguys.com. All right, let's talk about some dynasty trades here. And a couple of our favorite players here in the mix. We got Will Fuller, who was back this past week. Quarterback situation still in flux with Miami. Might be all year. But Fuller was back running some deep routes, almost had a touchdown. And a 23-second for Brandon Aiyuk, also getting back into the mix after a week or two being firmly in flux.
Is that a super flex pick or is that
I didn't see. I think it's one quarterback.
I think it's one quarterback. Man, give me Aiyuk. Like,
What's going on with Aiyuk? What's going on with Aiyuk? What's going on with Kyle Shanahan?
Well, you could say the other aspect is just take Fuller so that way you don't have to invest in San Francisco. I don't know. I think Aiyuk is trending back. You look at some of the numbers this week, and it is consistent with what Shanahan said. As much as we want to ever believe him on anything, that listen, he's working his way back from an injury. We see the routes come up. We see the usage come up. I wonder if Will Fuller's not at this point in his career going to be just a better version of like Ted Ginn, where he's getting basically 1 year stints. And that sort of gives me some concern. I think you have a little bit more outs and leeway in terms of the Aiyuk profile at this point. So that would be the reason I would take Aiyuk.
And it wasn't a first.
Correct.
So a second is like, getting the years added back. And again, if you say Aiyuk locked into a good situation, Deebo Samuel hasn't exactly been user-friendly in terms of injuries. Kittle, plays an aggressive style that he could be a little more prone to that. And, just see how it falls. Because, again, I think it's easy for people to forget now that we're kind of swooning 3 weeks into the season that Aiyuk was a massive year one hit with a round one pedigree. And that is hard to find. Is Devonta Smith on that track for this year? No. Like, it's not super common. I mean, look at Henry Ruggs last year, for example. I mean, so getting that security of profile, and like you said, getting the years and Fuller might be nomadic at this point. All right, Antonio Gibson for Miles Sanders and Darnell Mooney.
Antonio Gibson, because he actually touches the ball.
Yeah. More of a talking point. I mean, Gibson, they're not actually throwing to running backs this year. It's such a big difference from last year and the quarterbacks they had. And then this year, Fitzpatrick would have been the same way, in my opinion, but also Taylor Heineke. More bold, throwing downfield, throwing to wide receivers and tight ends a lot more than checkdowns. And that's affecting Gibson. I still can't believe he was just like Josh Jacobs, such a receiving centric player in college. And yet they're used the exact opposite in the pros.
He was a wide receiver at college.
Literally receiving the ball. And then he breaks a 70-yard screen. And aren't we confident that he'll go to 2 targets next week and it won't mean a thing? They will have not learned one darn thing. And you know what? They're still working through wide receiver 2 questions like they had a year ago. Curtis Samuel's not back. Diami Brown has not been an impact. They are, still light in the loafers for weapons. And yet Gibson, screen game, running routes, wheel routes, angle routes, all those things. Nope, not going to be a thing for us. We're not interested. And Sanders, is he unstartable? I see a start rate at like 80% every week. And I'm like, you just keep walking into a room where it's like, if you come in here, we're going to bash you in the head. I'm just letting you know. They're like, no, but what's in there? It's almost like Homer. Like he's just like, no, but I want to know. And he just gets hit. Like, what are we doing? Like Sanders is unstartable until further notice. Or a good matchup? I don't even know what a good matchup for the Eagles really is.
I know it's not against the Chiefs.
Any team. The next 3 weeks,
big
they
underdog.
play Tampa, they play the Chiefs, and they play some other strong offense. It's like, I see negative. They had no. Why would you lean on
game script?
My God. Yeah, then week 7 or something is going to be the next positive game script for them. Jalen Hurts better win some games because that draft pedigree, the higher it goes, the worse his stability is going to be for 2022. But Mooney's unstartable too until further notice. So
yeah, the only player in here that's startable is Gibson, so don't take him.
I just feel bad for Sanders. He's a good player. He's a good player. I can't. If he was on a different team, he could be a top 5 to 8 dynasty running back. He has that potential if he was in a great system.
Yeah. Hey, did you see that as of right now, the Philadelphia, because of the Wentz pick and the other pick that they have in the 2022 draft, they have 3 top 10 picks projected right now based on record.
Wow, if you're a dynasty GM's dream.
Yeah, if you're Indy and Wentz is
stop playing him,
you have to, right? Right,
yes,
like you have to. You can't seed a top 10 pick for a quarterback that is not playing you into a better pick than a top 10 pick.
Defense not good, offense not good.
Right, you have to not play him,
good.
Right? This is like Dynasty 101. You don't.
It's game theory 101 of like, are you serious? Like I'll say this: the moment you think a playoff is not in the cards, and frankly, it should be right now. But if it's not, it should be shortly. Another couple losses. I just, God, and Jonathan Taylor's another one. It's just painful to watch. I know Nyheim Hines' thing is but it wasn't in week 1, and now you have a team going down the tubes, and I don't see it. I don't see it, Elaine. All right, next trade here. full IDP, so that's going to enhance the pick in question. It's one quarterback. AJ Brown, interesting season so far for AJ Brown on the shelf. Chris Godwin, Henry Ruggs, and a 22 third, which I would reiterate, full IDP means you can get like a starting IDP player in round 3.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, in terms of insulation, I think AJ Brown, like I think Chris Godwin's interesting, but you're sort of wondering, he's on a 1-year deal. Is this a Kenny Galladay situation where he's going to leave? And that whole situation gives me pause when you see that happen with a guy on his rookie deal, or I guess now he's on a franchise tag, where AJ Brown's insulated against all of that. What do you think of? I think a not insignificant portion of this is, what do you think of Ruggs? Like, has he turned the corner? I mean, it wasn't a great metric profile coming out, but like, I think we are seeing more than maybe you and I expected coming into this.
Yeah,
season.
He's definitely on the success track. I mean, based on what he's showing this year, he's on a pace to have over 1,000 yards. Actually, 4 Raiders players are on pace for over 1,000 receiving yards, which hat tip to Derek Carr, friend of the show we've never talked to. And but yeah, I think Henry Ruggs as a top 10 pick. The thing that gets me is, we knew he could be a lid lifter. Like, that's not a debatable point. Like, oh, if he does one thing well, if he turns into, you mentioned, Deshaun Jackson or Ted Ginn or whatever, even to lesser degrees or whatever, that he could do that. 4-2 can do that. But he's made some rangy ball skills, high pointing, impressive plays. And I always look for that part, because wide receiver, you kind of need to do a bit of everything. I mean, yes, you could be a Michael Thomas and be a big possession bully guy inside of 10, 15 yards. You can live on that. That's possible. We've seen guys do it. You kind of want someone that can do a little bit of everything, especially for kind of small guy play big, like Brandon Cooks. He's small, shorter guy plays big. So that's the part that I've gravitated towards. And he's attached to a good quarterback. Carr's teaser always been good. But he's playing great because, you know what? He's got much better weapons than previously. So I think you have to take that profile seriously. Now, do I take it seriously by saying he's like a top 20, my top 20 rankings? No. But he's definitely higher than he was a month ago. And I don't think that's being overreactive. I think that's a guy that was on a bus track and the situation looks better. And you're talking about a guy that, again, is rewriting. In year 2, you should expect growth. Now, I wasn't expecting this. I go based on, comps and, trends and probabilities and stuff like that. So there's not a lot of nuance to how I value players of like, well, I love this guy, so here he goes, woo, up the elevator. I don't do a whole lot of that.
You're pretty boring in terms of your process.
Yeah. And the fact that your process is talking to mine about boring process, that's pretty funny. But yeah, so I moved up. Yeah. No.
Pouring in the most complimentary way.
None taken. Wow. We just become best friends. But yeah, I've moved Henry Ruggs up a decent amount. I mean, Mike Williams is another, talking point of just pedigree, having a great start to the season. So yeah, I think, if you value him, he's in my top 45, where he was a month ago, definitely not trending in that direction, and a guy that you can consider for your lineup, at this point, which is a huge shot in the arm. So I'm a little closer to Godwin on this side just because of Ruggs and the pick. But I do agree with you that the insulation of, you wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years, AJ Brown, let's say, is the most valuable piece. Because Godwin has the variable of free agency. If he goes and takes the money, I mean, it could turn into I'm going to go to a bad situation because they're going to pay me 3 for 45. But you know what? He's in Tampa for this year. that counts. I mean, that counts as part of it. And again, Ruggs is on a track where I would say nobody's really established themselves as the number 1 there. You would say Ruggs has the advantage. I don't think Hunter Renfrow is going away. So I think, honestly, pretty good trade. I think the way we're talking about it, it's a pretty good trade. I do wonder, AJ Brown's on the shelf. I don't know what's going on with Julio. Tennessee in general, their passing game is running on fumes. I don't know how this works out, how this looks. So Godwin having a good year and AJ Brown not having a good year, this could look like a lopsided one in that direction by December. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, last one. We got 1 quarterback and half PPR. James Robinson, and a second and a third next year for Marquise Brown. He's another one. He could have had 4 touchdowns this week. Had 0, I think.
James Robinson, a second, a third next year for Marquise Brown.
Marquise Brown, yeah.
Yeah, give me the Robinson side.
Okay. Wow, you said that definitively and easy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, Marquise Brown's fine, but James Robinson, like, I think James Robinson's probably undervalued. Like when you look at some of the, the metric grading stuff and some of that stuff, like he's one of the better performers so far. The whole Carlos Hyde was the starter thing
lasted 30 minutes,
right? And so now we're back on the James Robinson trade. I actually think he's probably an acquisition piece right now. If you need. We tend to not need running backs of his ilk. That's not tend to be what we target. But if you're looking in sort of bigger deals, he's probably undervalued in trades. It's sort of be the way I would attack him. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a windfall for the Robinson side.
Wow. Okay. Because Marquise Brown is basically what he's done so far is found money, right? I mean, that you weren't counting on him in your top 3 or 4 guys going into this year with all probability. And yeah, that second and third, just banking that as we know, you get deeper into the season. I mean, thirds and especially seconds can get you meaningful stuff if you're a contender. And yeah, Robinson has the variable of Etienne's coming back from injury. So assuming that that's just going to be a windfall of like, an ocean wave going over Robinson and he's just, pebbles turning into sand. That's not, I don't think pebbles turn into sand. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to remind you about
I have one more for you.
Let's do it.
For you. Let's go 3 2022 first round picks and Tony Pollard for Dak Prescott.
Sounds like a trade I know.
Let's just go a little bit further. A couple of the picks one of the picks is a guaranteed, probably a top 6 pick, and the other 2 are playoff firsts. And I feel pretty confident saying that. I usually don't feel confident saying that. So that sort of lays the land for you.
And how many quarterbacks would draw that? 5 or fewer, right? For sure, 5 or fewer.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or fewer. Right. Actually, I don't think Lamar Jackson pulls that, for example. Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Dak. Is that the list? I don't think Herbert pulls that. Do you think he does?
Probably not. I think Wilson, you could feel confident. Maybe I don't know if I don't.
No way he pulls that.
No, yeah, I don't think you need to give that. But
2 firsts and Pollard probably gets Wilson done. But no, I think the EV is on your side because
the Dak Prescott side, right?
Yeah, on the Prescott side because I think that the picks when you go later, and again, if you don't, I mean, we had 5 quarterbacks go in the top of round 1, top half of round 1. I think next year is going to focus around a running back or 2. And it's going to be, wide receivers are always, if you get those later first, it's a dart throw in terms of what you're going to get. You could get someone like CeeDee Lamb. You could get a slower start. I mean, there's a lot of variables there. So yeah, no, I think if you're a stronger team and just getting a plug and play cornerstone, I think that's a pretty good, cash in of picks. You get the picks, so you eventually either through the picks or through trading get more cornerstone players. Like that's the end game goal. So
yeah, it ended up being a cascade deal essentially. So I went back and I sort of charted out how I got the picks. It was essentially 4-11 and in my first for Dak Prescott is what it turned out to be. That's how I acquired all the picks and all the assets involved in the deal.
Were you light at quarterback?
I had Mahomes and Matt Ryan, so I'm stacking up Mahomes and Dak.
So Ryan going to 3 is kind of where you want him at this point.
Yeah,
for how this season looks, a lot, especially.
Yeah.
Do want to remind you about the League Dominator app. Just because the season started, you can still get that beautifully designed on your Apple and Google Play store. You can get that on your devices. You sync your rosters. I don't think enough people sync rosters. This is also available with the Footballguys premium membership. You get on the website and you can get those versions as well. But what it does is you just upload and sync all of your teams from a variety of providers. And again, I use it every single week. It saves me hours of time, and I'm in 45 leagues. So if you're in 5, again, it's still going to save you a bunch of time because it streamlines your lineup decisions, streamlines your pickups, and just you can see a clear highlight of all the players you have, where the Footballguys team projects them. They also do upside rankings, everything that you need. It can look specifically at the matchups. So I can't recommend it highly enough. The League Dominator app, and again, the online version is provided with your Footballguys subscription. All right, and we got some quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty forums. Oh, hopefully you're ready, Jordan, because this might be the best pool we've had since the season started.
It's like my favorite 15 minutes of any week. Here we go. I'm ready for this.
Let's get it.
Born for this.
Benched Jameis Winston for Justin Fields in Superflex this week.
My condolences.
We can all relate to bad lineup decisions. It happens. Justin Fields, State of the just what is your 2 bullet point thoughts here? Buckle
up. Turbulence ahead.
On to Cincinnati. Did that happen? Yeah, you know what? And Jameis Winston, again, you want to compare like rookie quarterback variance to Winston is at least a pro. Mm-hmm. He's at least a pro. When he threw those interceptions, what was it, week 2? That was, again, him trying to make a play and have his team have a chance. And he threw some picks. But 2 out of the 3 weeks, he hasn't done that. And he's doing it with rubbing sticks together in terms of weapons. Justin Fields did that with Allen Robinson. Is Allen Robinson unstartable?
Oh, man. It hurts my soul. No, he's not, because he's going to get volume. So he's going to regress towards himself. It's going to feel fine.
It's going to feel fine. Okay. For the 3rd week in a row, my opponent compiled the lowest score in the league.
For the 3rd week in a row, my
opponent scored the lowest score in the week. So you're a 3-0 team, and your all play might be like 20%. Enjoy the positive variance.
Yeah, 3-30. You could
don't overstate how good you are until mid-season for sure, because don't be surprised if you put together a 3 or 4 game losing streak if you're not that good.
Right.
You want to be lucky and good. You love to be lucky and good. It's good to be just one every once in a while too. I'm not sure how to bounce back mentally when you lose Christian McCaffrey and my team 135 projection barely cracks 80 to 90 points now. I went from top 3 to bad overnight.
You didn't. It's just how it happens, right? If one player doesn't impact you that much. So even
McCaffrey, right?
Right. Even in a like the absolute like greatest McCaffrey built in a lab type season, it's a 2.5, maybe 3 win difference. Like, and would be an all-time.
Well, it's over part of a season. At this point, it's over part of a season. We don't even know. He wasn't even put on IR yet. Right. So it could be, obviously that was 6 points or something in PPR. And it could be, another game or 2. That's, I think it's going to be longer than that if I was a betting man right now. But the point is, it doesn't look like last year at this point. Now, if it turns into the rest of the season, that's a bigger deal, obviously. Mm-hmm. But if it depends on one player, you weren't going anywhere anyway. Right? And to be fair, your greatest players, if you get a few weeks, but if you have them at the end, if you have those cannons at the end, that's what you want. It could be McCaffrey, could be somebody else. Mm-hmm. But if you have those guys, those horses attached to your trailer, you'll go places.
Yeah. You feel good about Chuba Hubbard?
You mean with a spot start?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I remember our Football Guys staff chat. I was reading some of the comments and I was like, well, I'm above that. Well, I'm above that. Like, I just think he's probably going to be 65, 70, 75% snaps based on what we saw. I don't know if Royce Freeman's going to be a huge impact. And with the routes he's going to run and the market share he's going to have, I think it's going to be hard for him not to be like a top 15 projection with upside from there.
Speaking of people who should have been a top 15 projection, it was Alexander Madison week. I haven't talked to you since this happened.
That's true. Exactly. How so glorious. How glorious. I was swapping my 12:50 to 1 p.m. swapping of lineups with Madison in.
I've rarely seen you as what's the word? Because we had a phone conversation, and then I think you changed your mind after the phone conversation. We talked at like 11:30.
The night before? Oh, that day?
No. Okay. Like after inactives had come out, like we were discussing.
Dalvin Cook's inactive didn't come out.
No, I know, but you were nervous about.
And then I said at 12:50 that Jay Glazer said that Cook is out, and then you acted like that already occurred.
Well, yeah, I felt really confident that Dalvin Cook was going to play.
I know, but it hadn't happened yet. Did we end up subbing Madison in?
I got a lot of Madison in my lineups. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
no,
you
I know. No, we specifically.
Did we?
It was versus McLaurin. It was versus McLaurin.
I don't think we did. So.
Well, anyway, but yeah, I did have some spots. I didn't, get him in there. But man, when he's your running back 3 or 4, kind of flexy lineup, that is a hammer throw. And you know what? For as much as he's had 2 spot starts, I think one was in week 17, he blew up, and then one was an earlier week in the season.
That week was horrible. Traumatic.
No, I know.
That
he
week
put up
was,
like a
was
he
so
put up
traumatic.
like a 4. He put up like a 4. This was predictable. We always talk about predictable starts. This was predictable, a glorious matchup, and it felt too good to be true. and it was delicious. Watching that whole game and knowing I kind of know if someone gets hurt before I start watching the game, and I knew he didn't get hurt. I was like, this is going to be good. Buckle in. Buckle in. And you know what? His usage, like his routes and everything, it was pretty much exactly like Dalvin Cook. His usage was exactly 1-to-1 how Dalvin Cook would have been used in that game.
And surprising nobody that pays attention, he performed exactly like
I think I saw a quote or two like, this is the week that Vikings fans are going to know. I think it was Dynasty GMs are going to realize what Viking fans already know, which is Alexander Mattison is just a guy.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
Is Dalvin Cook just a guy too? I'm just curious
because they scored similarly. Exactly.
But
yeah, it felt very, very good. It felt very good. Who knows how many more of those we get, but it was great to just, what was it? It's nice to win one every once in a while. It's nice to have a guy you have a lot and you just plug and play. And you know what? I had my best week. Of the 3 weeks, this was easily my best win percentage. Yep. And I think Mattison was a decent part of that calculus. I don't know that we can evaluate Sermon when Garoppolo is the quarterback. Garoppolo is terrible, awful. He may start the whole season though. Yeah.
I've learned the phrase hospital balls, which is interesting.
It's a football thing.
I never heard that phrase before until this week in describing Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. I think there's other reasons for being hesitant about Trey Sermon right now that don't involve his starting quarterback.
Kyle Juszczyk. Heyo. That was frightening. See, I had a lot less confidence in Trey Sermon because we hadn't seen it, and it was a complete. He has one carry or like one snap on the season. It was very shot in the dark. He came. Thank goodness for that touchdown. So if you started him or didn't start him, it really didn't matter. He scored like 10 or 11 or something like that. But man, you start seeing Juszczyk out there, and you're like, this is the ultimate. But you know what? I think Sermon's trending in the right direction. He's a rookie. He's trying to earn his way.
Well, no, I just in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
because it's been quizzical.
It's been a rough road. You know how rodeos go? How you're just trying to stay on for 10 seconds. Sermon, we stayed on 1 second. It started with inactive. What? Inactive? Inactive? I thought he was going to get 20 touches week 1. Okay. After 3 weeks, it seems like Jeff Wilson might be the most valuable 49ers running back rest of season. And he might not be back for a while.
That'd be right. That scratched me right where I itch, right? To use the Kramer Festivus line.
Exactly. Get the poll. Do you... I was just thinking back to the show we did, and we just talked about Seinfeld quotes. It's a Festivus miracle. So Jordan, what did you think was going to happen with the 49ers depth chart? I mean, they had Kerryon Johnson up. Jacquizz Patrick was a pickup last week. Like, was anything in play for you? Like, what was your expectation for last week?
I mean, the betting odds would have said like Trey Sermon's the leading running back, but I mean,
did you even realize like Juszczyk would be like a thing more than his typical role? Like, I wasn't even calculating that.
No, I didn't. That's not what I would have predicted.
It kind of makes sense though. I mean, everyone else is new. And Juszczyk has been around a while. He's like, I kind of say it's what Ryan Nall in our dreams could be. But yeah, I mean, Juszczyk has that experience of H-back, tight end, fullback, I guess running back now, could be part of that. Do you think Kerryon Johnson's going to be a thing, or Jacquizz Patrick, or is all this like people chasing waiver wire stuff just like shots in the dark of, no, it's not going to be anything?
I think it's unlikely it's going to be anything because we're going to start seeing guys get back. And this gets back to the Jeff Wilson thing. Like, I think we're going to get Jeff Wilson's be back, and Elijah Mitchell be coming back. And, maybe Sermon can solidify himself a little bit. I mean,
Jermichael Hasty is, on IR.
Right.
Apparently.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so, I mean, I do think I think at some point they're going to get back healthy and sort of back towards what their initial plan was. I guess my bet would be Kerryon Johnson, like if we're going super deep over Jack Patrick, but again, when teams keep cutting someone and he stayed out there for a long time on the wire, like that kind of tells us a lot of information about what we need to know.
All right, last one here. It took Jonathan Taylor half a season to understand how to run in the NFL. Sermon is going through the same growing pains.
I hope that's true. That requires you to have faith in predicting the judgment of Kyle Shanahan, and I'm just not I'm not sure I'm there yet, based on what he's done so far this year. So, and listen, I'll say this: like, if you go back too, like, he's a really good play caller, and he's done some good stuff on offense. One thing he has not done a particularly good job of is evaluate talent, and so we could sort of go back through his career arc of some of the draft picks that he has made and some of the decisions that he's made in terms of where he's placed talent. Placed his judgment on talent, and there's some questions there. So again, I was pretty bullish on Trey Sermon from the jump because I believed in that he was a good fit to Shanahan's system. I think if you could get out for what you paid, I think that doing so, maybe I wouldn't go all the way to zero on having him, but if you could get out at what you paid, I think that's probably not a bad process at this point and turn his pick into something liquid.
So meaning future first.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be getting out. Okay.
I saw someone get Noah Fant today. I think that's interesting.
Okay.
So I do think if you can do that, I wouldn't say I'm running to zero. I'm not bailing, but if you can get what you paid, I think based on what you've experienced so far, I think that's a pretty, a pretty good judgment. Cause I think you have to have gone through this experience with Trey Sermon, at least I have, and I have more doubt than I did when I had 40% exposure to him. And if that's the case, I think the only natural thing to do is try and sell it off if you can get what you paid.
Or, what if you use him as a proxy for that pick, and maybe you do a 2-for-1 to get an anchor player, get somebody else that's sort of popping a little bit. You get Sermon added on and you go 2-for-1 and consolidate the spot into something you really like, for a core level time period. Yeah, I do want to highlight with like I mentioned, the Footballguys season-long pro membership there and some of the things we do on a weekly basis. I will say the articles I read every single week, if you're in any IDP leagues, the job they do between looking at sleepers, the projections, having John Norton as one of the huge valuable resources, but they have 3 or 4 articles a week that I'm telling you, if you don't sit there and you watch all the games, it's a huge time saver. Where's the opportunities? You're tracking some of the running back injuries and things like that, but linebackers that are going to be in and out, new safeties that are going to be streamers, such a valuable resource if you play in any IDP leagues at all. I will say, some of the dynasty content, I do an article every week, but there's also dynasty rankings movement where you get 2, 3, 4 of us every single week in rotation talking about the different players that are moving up, moving down. You just get some great dialogue there. There's a lot of streaming information about kickers and defenses. So I can't say enough about whatever your niche is that you need. And again, Joe Bryant does a great job saying we're the guide. We're providing content it's unreasonable to expect you to read everything on the site every single week. It's voluminous. However, what do you need? Do you need help with streamers? Do you need help with the waiver wire? Do you need help with trading? All of these avenues are out there, so you can pick and choose to put in your shopping cart of what's important. You might start early in the season trying everything out, dabbling, and then you're going to center on the things that are most valuable to save you time and optimize the time that you have to read and consume content, like I mentioned earlier in the show. So we talked a lot about the 49ers situation. We talked a lot about profiles in this episode. James Robinson, Jordan got to highlight him a little bit. A.J. Brown, Chris Godwin, Emmanuel Sanders, Miles Sanders. And yeah, we talked at the top of the show about profiles of running backs that get you on the fast track to a high-end season, even if it isn't pretty. Got to even bring up Le'Veon Bell from 2-3 years ago as probably the prime example of that.
Of things not being pretty.
Exactly. Things not being pretty, but I think you finished in the top 20. So you'll take it and you'll plug and play them and you'll like it. Your lineup will like it. I am Chad Parsons. He's Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.